I told my sister's husband she was trying to get pregnant behind his back and ruined their marriage. AITA? I told my sister's husband she was trying to get pregnant behind his back and ruined their marriage. AITA? I'm 33 years old and the oldest of 3 sisters in my family. I'm also a wife, and I have a rambunctious 5-year-old daughter who keeps me on my toes every day. Being a mother is one of the most fulfilling roles of my life, and I try to embrace it fully, despite the challenges it brings. My youngest sister, Karina, 27 years old, has always wanted children, but when she married her husband, Danny, 30 years old, they decided they didn't want kids. I remember when she first told me, and I was shocked. As much as I respect their decision, it still felt strange to me, especially knowing how much Karina had always dreamed of being a mom. But I thought maybe it was just a decision they made together, a choice they were comfortable with. I didn't push her on it, believing they knew what was best for them. A few weeks ago, Karina and I had our regular girls' night out. After a few drinks, she opened up to me in a way I hadn't expected. She told me that she had always wanted to be a mother, but Danny had refused to even consider it, citing his difficult childhood. She said she had always heard that some men don't want kids when they're younger, but they change their minds as they grow older, and she had always thought Danny would be one of those men. But here they were, years into their marriage, and he still adamantly refused. Then came the part that completely shocked me. Karina told me she had had her IUD removed. She and Danny had been using condoms while she figured out her next birth control method, but the shocking part was that she had been secretly trying to get pregnant by reusing those condoms. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister, whom I had always admired for her strength, was now doing something that I could only describe as desperate and dishonest. I was stunned, unsure of how to respond at first, but I couldn't stay quiet. I told her straight up that what she was doing was essentially the female version of men poking holes in condoms to get someone pregnant without their consent. I told her to stop immediately, that what she was doing was reckless and crazy. But Karina didn't seem to take my words seriously. She brushed it off, claiming that Danny was just great with kids and that she knew he'd make a great father eventually. She laughed it off like it was no big deal and quickly changed the subject. I was left in a state of disbelief. The next day, I confided in my husband. He was equally appalled. He told me that what Karina was doing was completely unacceptable and that I couldn't just let it slide. His sense of justice was so strong, and he felt that I had a responsibility to stop her, to make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. I felt the weight of that responsibility, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't just about Karina, it was about our family, our values, and our right to protect our own. I couldn't let go of what Karina had confessed. It ate at me. I reached out to Danny behind Karina's back, asking if we could meet for coffee. I didn't know how to begin the conversation, but I felt it was necessary to talk to him. He needed to know what was going on. We exchanged some back and forth, and I tried to keep it vague, just hinting that he needed to talk to Karina more about her feelings on children. I didn't think she was being honest with him, and I worried that he had no idea what she was doing. Danny kept pressing me for details, and eventually, I revealed the truth, that I believed Karina was trying to get pregnant secretly. When I mentioned the condoms, Danny looked physically sick. He excused himself quickly, visibly shaken by the revelation. No sooner had he left than my phone started buzzing relentlessly with calls and messages from Karina. She was furious. The accusations poured in. She called me every name under the sun, blaming me for ruining her marriage. She screamed that I had destroyed everything and that Danny had even mentioned the word divorce during their fight. She accused me of being jealous of her career and of trying to take away her right to be a mother. She claimed that my entire identity was tied up in being a stay-at-home mom and that I couldn't stand her being focused on her own life. Those words cut deep. They felt like a stab to the heart. I couldn't even process it all. I hung up, turned off my phone, and started sobbing. After that, things spiraled even further. Karina reached out to the rest of the family, blaming me for turning Danny against her and accusing me of causing her marriage to fall apart. My mother, who has always been the matriarch of the family, took her side. She told me that while Karina's actions weren't great, many men changed their minds about having children, like my father had once he accidentally got me pregnant. She went on to say that it wasn't my place to intervene, and that what I had done was unforgivable. I felt completely alone. I had tried to protect my sister, but it had all backfired. Now, I've been uninvited to Christmas, and the rest of my family has either turned against me or become cold and distant. They can't even look at me the same way anymore. The only person on my side is my husband, who continues to remind me that I did the right thing. But the guilt and confusion still weigh on me. I thought I was doing the right thing, but now I feel like my whole world is falling apart. I never intended to destroy Karina's marriage, but it seems like everything has blown up in my face. I need help. I don't know what to do next. Was I wrong? Update 1. After everything that had happened, I felt like I was standing in the middle of rubble, unable to see where to go next. My family relationships seemed to have completely crumbled, and I felt isolated, not just from my mother, but from the rest of my family as well. Even though I knew I had done the right thing, the pain from the criticism and the distance everyone put between us made me feel as if I was carrying a guilt that couldn't be washed away. A week later, I received a call from my mother. This time, it wasn't the harsh words or anger I had come to expect, but a soft voice, almost pleading. "We need to talk," she said. For the first time in all this time, I felt a small glimmer of hope. Could there be a chance for us to repair this relationship? I agreed to meet her, though inside I still felt uncertain. I didn't know how to prepare myself to face her. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe somewhere private with no one around to witness our conversation. When I arrived, she was already sitting, waiting for me. Her eyes were no longer cold as before, but tired, filled with worry. "Sweetheart, I know I've made mistakes. I can't undo what's happened, but I understand that you did what was best for your family," she began, her voice soft, carrying a sense of acknowledgement and regret. I sat down, listening without saying a word. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. The relationship had been damaged so much, and I couldn't be sure everything would return to how it was. But I also knew I couldn't shut her out completely, because I understood that everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes it takes time to heal. "I still can't accept what you've done, but I also know we can't change the past. You tried to do the right thing, and I need to learn to forgive, not just you, but myself as well," I replied, trying to keep calm while my emotions were overwhelming me. She was silent for a moment, then nodded slightly. "I'm sorry for not listening to you before. I know you were just trying to protect yourself and your family. I understand that you can't continue accepting my mistakes." We sat there in silence for a while, but it felt like something had shifted, even if it was small. I didn't know if everything would ever go back to normal, but at least I felt like I had been freed from the weight of the tension and pain that had been building for so long. When I returned home, I noticed a small change in how my family was looking at me. Although no one said it directly, the coldness had lessened a bit. My husband was still by my side, supporting me, and that was what mattered most. In the end, I realized that I had done the right thing. Even though it wasn't always easy, I stood up for what was right, and that was something I would always be proud of. My mother didn't change overnight, but I could see that we had taken a step forward, a new beginning for our relationship. I wouldn't forget what had happened, but I also understood that sometimes, to keep moving forward and live our lives, we have to learn to forgive and accept what can't be changed. Update 2. After the meeting with my mother, although I felt a little relief, the tension in the family hadn't truly disappeared. My relationship with Karina continued to be strained. She didn't accept my advice or interference, and it seemed like she was determined to keep her actions a secret. Every time I tried to talk to her about it, she would either stay silent or change the subject, as if I had no right to intervene in her life. A week later, I received a message from Danny, Karina's husband. He asked to meet with me to talk about everything. I felt a bit nervous, but also knew that this was an opportunity to resolve the issue once and for all. When we met, Danny looked tired and anxious. He began speaking. "I don't know what to do anymore. Karina has changed so much since we got married. She never told me about wanting kids, and now I find out she's been trying to get pregnant without my consent. I can't believe she would do this." I looked at him, feeling the pain and disappointment in his voice. "Danny, I know this is hard to face, but Karina needs to understand that what she's doing is unacceptable. I don't want to interfere in her life, but I can't let her continue acting like this without your consent. The two of you need to have a clear conversation about what really matters." Danny nodded, then looked at me with determination. "I will talk to Karina. I'll make it clear that we need to have a serious conversation about what she's doing and about having kids, but I don't know how she's going to react. I'm afraid she'll never forgive me if I say this." I felt the tension in his voice, and I understood that Danny was facing an incredibly difficult decision. "Danny, I know this isn't easy, but remember that you're not facing this alone. If you need, I'll help you work through it. The important thing is to be honest and clear with each other, because that's the only way you both can build a sustainable future." After the conversation with Danny, I felt a little relief. At least now I had convinced him to face the truth and have an open conversation with Karina. However, I still couldn't be completely at ease. I knew this wasn't going to be simple, and there would definitely be strong reactions from Karina, but I also understood that sometimes we need to face painful truths in order to move forward. A week later, Danny called to tell me that he had spoken to Karina. She's really mad at me, but we've had a clear conversation. Karina promised she would stop and wouldn't do anything further without my consent, but I don't know if we'll be able to go back to how things were. I felt some relief hearing that Karina agreed to stop, but I also knew her anger and disappointment weren't necessarily over. Their relationship still faced many challenges ahead, and I could only hope that Karina would truly change and understand the importance of respecting her partner's decisions. The next day, I received a message from Karina. This time, she didn't call me a ruiner or accuse me with harsh words like before. She simply wrote, "Thank you for warning me. I didn't realize I had gone too far, but I'll stop. I don't know when we'll be able to talk normally again, but I'll think about everything that has happened." Although there was no direct apology, I sensed a slight shift in how she was approaching the situation. Maybe only time would heal the wounds in our relationship, but at least I knew that I had done what I could to protect my family and the values I believe in. The relationship between my mother and me, between Karina and me, still had a long way to go, but I had learned an important lesson. Sometimes, to protect the ones we love, we have to do hard things, and sometimes we have to face uncomfortable truths. However, the most important thing is that I chose to stand up for myself and my family, and that is something I will never regret. Update 3. Some time passed, and my life began to slowly return to normal, but the old wounds within the family still hadn't fully healed. Even though I had done everything I could to protect myself and my family, the relationships between my mother and me, as well as between Karina and me, were still filled with tension. However, I realized that time was the most important factor in healing everything. One day, while I was working at home, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Karina. I hesitated before opening it, not knowing what she would write. But when I finished reading it, I felt a sense of surprise. She wrote, "Sis, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I was wrong not to respect Danny's decision and for doing things that made you worry. I'm sorry for letting everything go too far. I know you only want what's best for me, but I've been too stubborn. While I'm still confused about some things, I will stop and reconsider what I really want. I hope that one day we can start fresh." I couldn't help but feel a little relief reading these words. Although there wasn't a direct apology from my mom, at least Karina had shown awareness of her mistakes. I decided to call her immediately. The conversation was marked by an unusual silence, but I could sense her sincerity. "Thank you for not giving up on me," Karina said, her voice choking. "I don't know how to face this, but I'm going to start over. I know I need to change." Although we couldn't talk about everything, I felt like a new door had opened. I couldn't be sure that everything would change immediately, but at least there was a chance to start again, to heal the relationship between us. A few days later, my mother called me. This time, her voice was completely different from before. "Honey, I know I was wrong. I also understand that you can't always forgive me right away, but I will do whatever I can to prove that I want to fix everything." I could feel the change in her tone, and although there were still many things left to say, I realized she was trying. "Mom, I can't change the past, but I hope you understand that I did what was necessary to protect my family and myself. I will always be ready to listen to you, but we need time to heal." My mother was silent for a long moment, then said, "I won't make you suffer anymore. I'm sorry." Although it wasn't a complete apology, to me it was a big step forward. I understood that everything would take time, but at least there was awareness and an attempt to change from both my mother and Karina. Our family relationship still hadn't fully healed, but I was starting to feel that things were gradually improving. I continued focusing on my family, with my husband and children, who have always been by my side, helping me get through every challenge. I learned that no matter how difficult things may be, family is the most important thing, and sometimes all it takes is a little time and patience for everything to stabilize. Each day, I felt myself growing. I wasn't afraid to face the past anymore. I can't change what happened, but I can choose how I live and how I will face the future. Even though there are still many challenges ahead, I'm ready to face them all because I know I'm stronger than I've ever been.